Hello, my name is Dean Burden, and my wife and I live in an off-grid home, and we filmed some footage on that, and you'll be able to see we have a 2.4 kilowatt system as opposed to this entire system here being a 19.8. Obviously it's about 10 times bigger. So our system is good for an off-grid system because we have a specific house designed for that 2.4 kilowatt system, and it's worked very well for us. This system that you see presently right here is a 19.8 kilowatt system, and that is specifically set up for intertide. That means you're connected to the grid, you're producing power, and sometimes you're producing power to go back in the grid, and sometimes you're just utilizing that power yourself. Like I said, this is 19,800 watts, or considered 19.8 kilowatt system. This system was originally designed by me, and then I had a structural engineer come in and do a bunch of work with us to make sure that we have it with a stamped structural engineering print. And we have that print for this system to stand 80 plus mile an hour. He said that it's guaranteed over that, but I would say 80 plus mile an hour. If you look at the space behind me, we're looking at total distance of 108 feet. And we're a 15-foot tall wing, and there's 99 panels. Each section it's in 3 sections, 3 ground mount sections, and therefore we've got 33 panels on each section for a total of 3 of them being 99 panels. And it works very well this way. We'll go and look at the meters in a few minutes and you'll see how much power this is producing. One of the reasons for the ground mount system is to make sure that we can adjust it. It's not on a roof that we can't clear snow off of it in the wintertime, and in the wintertime, if you follow me, you can see that there's a jack handle right here. I can take this jack and loosen up the pins on each end and lower this jack down and tip the angle of these panels almost vertical in the winter because the sun is way in the south at the wintertime. During the summertime, they're close to being flat like they are right now. So you can see we're producing energy at the utmost power. We're gaining about 20% by having the angle on the panels. This is not my specs. This is the U.S. Department of Solar Energy that they're computing all these out, that you're gaining about 20%. There's a good possibility a lot of people only want to put it on a roof, and that is fine. They work well, but they don't produce quite as much energy as if it's a ground mount system. We just went out and looked at the 19.8 kilowatt solar array, and this is what they call a net meter to Edison. That means it can read either direction. If he is producing power like today, he's actually selling power to Edison. In a day that he's actually using a lot of power in this building, this is a processing building, then he's actually buying power from Edison as well as the energy that he's producing. So this is called a net meter. And a net meter reads either direction, and it gives him at the end of the month, it gives the energy that he's actually consumed and actually purchasing from Edison. It doesn't tell any of the rest of it. The next meter we're looking at is this one, and this is the meter that is actually the power that's being produced in the solar panels. This actually discounts from his electric bill. A typical example is around $300 to $350 a month is what comes off a typical electric bill with this meter running per month. Plus the energy that you're actually making with the solar panels, yes, you're getting paid 11 cents per kilowatt hour here, but you're also able to consume that electricity at no cost to you, and you get paid for it as well. As opposed to the net meter tells just the energy you're consuming only. You have 2 meters in this. You have the net meter, and you also have the meter in which reads the power that you're actually producing in the solar system. Edison requires that you put a main solar disconnect in, so if they want to shut off the power to this system, they can do it at any time from outside of your building. And that's what this system is. Also, on the inverters on the inside of this building, they test for power in the grid every 1/60th of a second. So 60 times per second they're testing that power. If that power in that grid shuts down due to an electrical storm or pole going down or whatever, at that point in time, that power stops. So no one will get hurt fixing the lines or whatever. So until that power comes back up on the grid, you won't have any power here. Okay, this is part of the ground mount system that we're putting. There's a 3-foot diameter hole, as you can see right here. There's concrete 5 feet deep right here, and there's some big bolts that go down into from this plate. There's a 1/2-inch plate right here, and in that 1/2-inch plate there's welded 4 big bolts, and they go way down in that concrete, and then there's some huge re-rod down in there that supports this whole system. There's 5 holes per unit like this, and then there's one 8-foot deep, 3-foot diameter concrete hole. So it's a massive system below the ground to make this structure solid and sound. This particular setup right here is a 2.4 kilowatt system, which is very small in comparison to what some of we're putting in today. This system has functioned well over 7 years. We're going on to 8 years at this point. We've lived in this home. This system is currently an off-grid system. That means we're not intertied with any of the commercial grid in Michigan or anywhere else. We're providing all of our own power. We have a battery backup system and a backup generator as well. And it's functioned very well, like I said, going on 8 years. We are also working with people to develop and put in integrated systems, in other words, systems that are connected to the grid, that they're producing power, and what power they don't use goes back into the grid, and they get paid for that. So it makes a very good system when they do that, because they don't have to deal with a battery system like I do or a generator system if they want to be intertied. Plus, there's some really big incentives right now from Detroit Edison and from the federal government. A friend of mine called and he asked me if I had a couple hours. Okay, I went over there to see him, and he wanted to talk about solar, and I thought, what's the sudden interest? Because usually no one has much of an interest in solar in this area. We're kind of the oddity. So at that point I said, well, okay, I'll spend a couple hours and we'll talk about this. Well, this friend of mine took me down to T&T Equipment, where one of the first systems was installed in the area, and I met Stephen Flick. Has been involved in several systems, but because of my background of more than 8 years worth of experience in this field, I decided to talk to Steve about some of this stuff, and this friend of mine wanted to know if this was truly real. I mean, can this system work in here? Most people don't believe that it can in Michigan. So Steve and I started discussing things. Through a bunch of talking, we went detailed in a lot of information, and therefore he's working with selling large systems. This is a 2.4 kilowatt system, and we have a system now that we're selling is 19.8 kilowatt system, and that's the maximum DTE will allow us to do. So through some negotiations, Steve and I formed a business, and through that we're now selling 19.8 systems and smaller in Michigan, depending on what the person needs. It can be for a business, it can be for a farm, it can be for a residence. Any of those systems, the design can be whatever size the need is for their power needs. One of my major goals after partnering up with Steve and with putting some systems in around here, my main goal in Sanilac County is to make sure we're using local people. Part of this money that we're using for these solar systems comes out of the stimulus package. And by being out of the stimulus package, the purpose of this, from what I understand, is to create jobs. We've hooked up with local manufacturers, local electricians, local people to install the ground mount systems and roof mount systems. It's very important in my mind to hire as many local people, because if we don't use the money locally, it doesn't stay locally, it just disappears very quickly. So one of my main goals in this whole operation is to be able to bring local people in, put people that are laid off to work, and build these that are going to make and save money for people in the future.